reading documentation. And it shows, you can, and also just kind of guessing a little bit or using context clues, whatever they say, to figure out what's going on here, right? So if you scroll down through here, and we kind of know what Postgres is, but we can see that they set us up with this initial command. So let's go back. Okay, so if you can, so the Docker run, we know what that does, right? And then you can see we have the Postgres. So if we don't have this image, it will download this image, and now we have these different flags, okay, which are essentially arguments. So the -- name is to name your container. Okay, so remember, like, our containers get a name by default that are like those clever little names. And then we have the -e. These are environmental variables set like essentially inside of your container. So here it's setting an environmental variable of Postgres password equals my secret password. The -d stands for daemon. That means run this in the background. That one you don't really need, but let's just see this, I guess. We'll remove the -d. So you can see, right, like this is now booting up Postgres. I don't know if we didn't set a Postgres user, so it might be a little hard for us. Let's take a look. If I want to look at the different containers running, we can see, this is the sum Postgres. That's the name of the container, and that's showing up because we provided this name argument here, right? So we're not getting that random one. This Docker command, this is like the thing that kicked off, and this is defined kicked off our container, and this is defined internally in the Docker file. And then this is this is the image that we're booting up, right? Is Postgres. This is the port, like internal, that the process is running on. We can exec into this maybe by doing docker exec -it some Postgres, right? And then do bash. And you can see what's going on here. So this is essentially like a bash shell, right? It's like running Linux. And inside, on Linux, it's running Postgres. So if you do the env, you have to do like print env. You see that? Print env. We can see we set the password. We set the environmental variable here. And then the image will look to this environmental variable that's set here to then set the Postgres password, like when we type in, for example, PSQL, right? So somehow the image is, saying, okay, I'm going to look at what this environmental variable is and use this environmental variable to allow you to log in. The only reason why I'm like a little concerned is we did not set the user, which I think we have to do as well, right? Like if I just type PSQL, it says role root does not exist. And that's basically saying, this where you're trying to log in as like user root, but you need to like specify the user. I don't know, maybe Postgres. Oh, that worked. Yes, guys. Yeah, so this worked fine. I guess by default it uses Postgres. That's fine. I'm surprised it didn't require me to put this in, but it didn't. So we can also set, I think and you can see it's telling us, I guess, that we can provide this user of Postgres to log in. I'll show you that in a second. Okay, so here's the Postgres password, and then here's Postgres user. This optional environmental variable is used to set a user and its password. Interesting. So maybe this would only work. Maybe the password's only relevant if we also set a user. So let's try that. So again, what we'll do, let's go over here, shut down. So we'll just use the default. We don't need this -- name. We'll just use the funky name they provide. So we're doing docker run. Now we're setting the environmental variable for for this Postgres password, and then we'll set another environmental variable for the user. And these can be in whatever order. Like it's just setting So we'll say Postgres user equals Jigsaw. All right. And now it's booting stuff up. You can read through this if you want to, but let's go over let's go over Docker PS. And we can see here it's giving us that random name because we didn't specify it as an argument over here. But we can sh into this, right? So we can do docker exec -it into this container with bash. And now if I do the print-env, we should see that both the password set and the user set. And now I wonder if I do PSQL. Let's see if I do PSQL dash. If I try to log in as the user Postgres, does that still work? It does not. Look at that. So now that we've provided a Postgres user, right, we have to log in using that username of Jigsaw. All right. And again, it didn't require the password. Interesting. I don't know why. All right. So, we can, from here, you can just look around, right, and see, okay, it gave us this initial database. That's the same as our username. There's probably no tables connected here, okay? But, you can start to see through some degree of exploration, we're able to start to figure this thing out. So in other words, the first thing maybe to figure out is that this is like a Linux environment, right? We have bash running on here. And then inside of this, we also have Postgres running. We can just connect to it by doing PSQL. Let's exit out. One other thing we could do is, because we are, what we're doing here is we're running the bash command against this container. But I think the documentation says, you see it here, what it's indicating is that this is the image name, Docker run in interactive mode, the image Postgres, PSQL. All of a sudden, we're now running a PSQL command against Postgres technology that's running in this container, right, in our container. Okay, so we're issuing a command to Postgres the same way that we're issuing a command, like a bash command, to the running container. And then here we're just providing our normal PSQL flags. Okay, so that's another thing we could do is just instead of issuing the bash command, we probably can issue the PSQL command. Oh, we can, and we just have to do -u Jigsaw, right? And now we are directly into here. All right, so it's just we're just specifying commands to issue against a running container. Bash was one of them if we want to go from bash and then issue this Postgres. Otherwise, we can just directly do that. But that's one thing I wanted you to just pay attention to is all right, we have Postgres running, so we're issuing this Postgres command against the Postgres running in this container. All right. Questions about any of this stuff so far? We can do some additional things from here. Okay, so I think one of the things I ask you to do, I believe, is hold on, let's move into a better, here's my Docker Postgres lab. So one of the things we ask you to do is run this create tables.sql. All right, so there's different ways to do it, but one thing we could do, let's shut this down, is so here's what I think the way I set it up is basically say, if we want to, we can try to so here we're setting various environmental variables. Here's the Postgres image. You can run PSQL-u Jigsaw, right, directly and kind of get in there, right? So we can do that. Nope, I guess I'm lying. Docker run -e Postgres user Postgres Maybe we can't do it directly, or maybe someone else knows. I do have to bind mount first? I don't think so. I thought that we should be able to do this. Yeah, I don't know. What I could do is boot this up. Maybe I have to boot this up and then, so I can boot this up and then run against this container. Now, what eventually I ask you to do is to run the file of, for instance, this create tables file against, the proper database, whatever it is, maybe it's Jigsaw or whatever, that's running inside our container. The issue is that this file, I believe, needs to be inside of the container in order to actually run it against that Postgres database. So, let's first make sure we're doing it against the proper container, Docker PS. It's called Vibrant Bernal now. Okay, so here we're getting a proper error. So it says, hey, there is no file create tables.sql. It's looking for it inside the image, inside the running container. So what we should do is Shuma was saying, we can bind mount this file, like kind of move this file into our container. So one way, let's just delete this. One way we can do that is adding the -v flag, right? And then you can see we have this create tables. That's in the source, where are we? In the source directory, create tables.sql. So this should be, what we want to -v do is do the $pwd /source. So it's like the present working directory /source. Move this folder into one of the folders in my actual container. Okay? I don't know what I kind of do have a guess. I think it's probably the home folder. But what I would do the first time is just take a look to find a good folder to maybe move this thing into. Let's just look real fast. So we're booting it up. Now come over here and we will just run bash. Right? Sorry, I did it again. Condescending void. So I just want to see what's a good folder to move the file into. Oh my god. Why can I not do? Oh, because I'm doing this PSQL. Okay, so let me show you. So you can see this. We have these various folders. I want to move the create tables file into one of these folders. So I think like the home one is probably fine. You can see there's nothing in there. Maybe lib. But what I did was just like look for one that's available. So in order to, let's try to do that. So again, we'll now shut this down. And now we're just going to bind mount. So do the /v. And now we'll do the $pwd. So move this source folder, the contents of the source folder, into the /home folder in the running container, and then finally put in the image that we want to run. Let's see if this does anything. No errors. We want to essentially see, did my create tables file here, right? Did this file get moved into the Docker container? So to do that, let's do Docker PS again. And now it's called sleepy whatever. And let's go in there and let's look at the home, ls home. And there it is. Okay? So you see that? So all we did was we just wanted to find like a folder that we can place this file into. We chose this one. And now that it's in this container, we should be able to run the command, right? Like if I want to, we could probably exit out of here. And now we should be able to run that create tables command You see this? Remember this file wasn't available in the container? Now it should be located in /home /create tables.sql in this container, I think. So what we're doing is we're issuing this post PSQL command, again, as the user jigsaw, this file against the database jigsaw, right? And we're issuing it against this running container. That seems to have worked, actually. Okay. And we can confirm that by, like, we can connect to this now if we want to, -u jigsaw, right? And then just look at the tables. And we can see that now we have some tables here. Okay. So for this, what we did was, right, it was 2 steps. One was over here, we did this -v where we bind mounted, right, the contents of the source directory, right? This is where the create tables.sql file is, into the home directory. So that was step 1, get that create tables file into our image. And then step 2 was actually run it.
These changes should be right because we mounted the file with the image in the image.
Yeah.
So if we change something in the image, create SQL file, it will affect on our hard drive too, in the source folder.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Right. If we, like, for instance, went into that image, went into the running container and changed something in the home directory, we would see that, like added a file, we would see that in our source directory. That's correct. But do you all get what's going on here? So again, we're taking the contents of the source directory and basically creating that port, that like portal into the home directory of my image. Right? So now that I have this create tables file inside my running container, then I can run that file. Right? Because just remember again, the file lives, if we connect, right, you can now see the file inside the home directory. Right? I'm inside the container and you can see the files here. And so you can just run it, you can just issue PSQL -u, like our user is jigsaw, -f, right? We can just home create tables, right? Now that it lives here, we can run this file against the database inside of our container.
So did you add persistence to the database itself or just put the...
Not yet. No. We will need to do that. Like if I shut down this container, that running, all those tables will disappear that we created. So all we did so far was we used bind mounting to move the file into the home directory. And then now that once we have that create tables file into the directory, then we can use it to, then it lives inside of our container. And now, we can run this file against our database. Questions about that? Or things I can help fill in about this?
Never mind.
Yeah.
So realistically, like, so is there any use case like you want to create like a database inside a container because it's like transient, right? So once you like shut down the container, the database basically gone. So I guess more realistic, like kind of connecting to a database server instead of creating a database inside a container, right? Is it?
Well, what we'll do, so when you have the database, So you have Postgres running, like you have this database that's running, right? So this is booted up our container, okay? And let's say we run, so we get things set up. There's like, the database itself is essentially a server, right? It's like listening on port 5432. It's listening for us to issue commands against it. And the only thing that we need, like persisted, really, is the data. Like well, it seems obvious, right? But the data is just one part of it, right? If you think about our image, right, we had like Bash, right, living on there, and we have the Postgres technology living on there. So the idea is if we can take the data and store it either in like a volume, right, or just in a folder, we'll use a volume, or in a folder on our machine, then we can, the rest of it is like disposable, right? Like the rest of it, we can just shut down that container, boot up a new one, and just hook the volume into this guy, into us, so it'll look exactly the same. So that's what we want to do next, is just take where the data is living and connect it to a volume, right? Because the volume will persist on our laptop, right? The volume lives on our laptop somewhere. Okay, so let's just, what did we do so far, right? Let me just review. Okay, so we did a couple of things. The first, I think we just do, start from the very beginning. We just do Docker run Postgres, right? In order to, no, maybe I'm lying. Okay, database is uninitialized because we did not specify a password. You must specify a Postgres password. Cool. So now we'll set some environmental variables. So do this -e Postgres password equals, some password. Right? And then we can also specify, I guess, another environmental variable of Postgres user equals Jigsaw. Okay, so let's boot this up. What that does is now it boots up a container of Postgres running. We can do docker exec -it, so run a command, issue a command against this running container, and that command is the bash command. So now we are inside the container, and we can see those environmental variables that we set up. Okay? These environmental variables, the image has determined that if you change these environmental variables, it will change the configuration of the Postgres running in this image. For example, we can see that now if I type PSQL, it will not, I have to log in as the Jigsaw user, right? So if I do PSQL, it says, hey, root doesn't work. If I try PSQL-u Postgres, that doesn't work either. The one that works is what matches my Postgres user, right? So I have to do PSQL-u Jigsaw, right? And that works. So what we did was we set an environmental variable here when we booted up with this -e flag, right? When we booted up Postgres, that set this environmental variable here, and now the image specifies kind of to look at this environmental variable in Bash, and that's the corresponding user, right, that we should log in as, okay? The other thing that you can already see is this PG data thing. What this is the path to where our Postgres data is being stored, okay? So the next thing, we haven't gotten to this yet, but the next thing we'll have to do is, this is what we're going to want to connect to a volume. And as long as we store the contents of this directory in a volume, right, in a box on our computer, then we should be able to boot up another container and basically say, hey, use the data from the volume, right? Use this data from the volume. Okay, so back to in terms of what we reviewed, we saw that we basically set a couple environmental variables that in a bash, right? and that these are being used by Postgres. The next thing that we needed to do was somehow get that create tables, this file, into our container, right? And our way for doing that was to do like the bind mounting. So just remember what the bind mounting does is it kind of like creates a portal, right? Or like I've described it as like a trap door from a folder on your computer. So we need a trap door that says, okay, this file, whenever we like go into the home directory in the image, it actually is going to be reading from this directory, this source directory where this file lives. So this is the way we're going to get this folder into our container, our Postgres container. So the way we do that was with this -v flag, right? And we'll just do this $pwd / I'm just going to do /source because right now I'm not in that source directory yet. So it'll be /source, and I want that to map to the /home directory inside the container. Okay, so now I'll do Postgres, boot this thing up, and again we'll connect to it. And we have to look at the new name, so it's called SADNash. Right, and now if we look at the home directory, you can see this file is in there, right? That file is in there because we mapped it there, right here. Take the contents of the source directory, map it to the home folder, we take a look at the home folder, and now we find it there. Now that it's there, the next thing we can do is effectively run the create tables.sql. Let's just look at it first. PSQL jigsaw, as user jigsaw. Okay, if we look at it now, there's no relations here, right? It's a new container in our, so it's starting fresh. There's the only thing, there's nothing there. So if we want to run it, we can say, okay, against this database, against the Jigsaw database as the Jigsaw user, run this file, create tables, home / create tables.sql, right? That's where the file is. Then we run it. It seems like it's working. Now we'll log in again, log into the Jigsaw database as the user Jigsaw, view the tables, and they exist. As we know, if we shut down the container, this will be destroyed, right? We're not saving anything at this point. Questions about any of that, right? Because what we're going to do next is now save or connect the volume so that we can save our data. Okay, so let's exit out of here. So now the next thing to do, oh, you know what? That was really cool. It was actually showing me. It actually like spit out, I think. It was like saying, I think even if you looked down here, it was saying something like, this is where the data is being saved. But it's all right. We'll look for it in the documentation. Right, so it talks about these different environmental variables. PostgreSDB to define the name of default database if we want. PG data. The optional variable can be used to define another location for database files. So the default is this, /var/lib /PostgreSQL data. And they even provide like an example of bind mounting right here, right? This is -v, this is to a folder, right? Because you can see that because it has the / to /var/lib PostgreSQL data. So what we want to do is, all right, I guess I was wrong about that thing. But what we want to do is specify another /v, and instead of doing a / here, because we don't want this going to a folder, we want this going to like a volume. So we can do that simply by just calling a volume. So I'll call this my like /v, my Postgres vol. I don't love that name. Let's call this my Postgres data. And then we want to link this thing on my computer, right, my Postgres data, to this folder in the image, right, in the container, right, because this is where all the data is being stored. So, and I have an extra colon there. Let's just delete that. So now this should be hooked up. And this will, remember, this will create a new, I'm just concerned I might have already created a volume with that name. So I'd call it Postgres Data DB, because I don't think I've done that before. Okay. So now let's go back. Sorry, we'll do Docker PS. We see here's our container. We'll do Charming McClintock. Now we will see in the home directory we have that create tables because we are still, have this -v for the source directory mounted into home. And now we can do the PSQL -f home / create tables.sql against the Jigsaw database. Can I do that? As the user Jigsaw. We'll see if that works. Can I do that? Yeah, that works. Okay. So now this, this database should be saved in this volume. This volume. So if I shut this down, right, you can see this. I logged me out already. If I look, there's no containers running, and now I boot this thing up again, right, with my volume connected to my volume. Then I should, let's go directly in here, Docker exec -it bash, and now I'll do PSQL-u jigsaw-d jigsaw-dt. You see that here they still are, okay? Because all the data was saved in my volume. And so when I reboot it up with my volume, those changes were persistent. And this will, if I do an insert into, right, any changes will be saved to the database. Okay? And just to prove that this is what's happening, if I do not connect to my volume, right, if I remove this, so now I'm no longer connected to my volume, now it will boot it up, but will not be, looking to the volume for any data. So when we where are we? When we go back, Docker PS, if we exec into this thing, right, and do PSQL-u jigsaw-d jigsaw-dt, they're gone, okay? Because it's really saved in my volume, all this data, okay? So that's the idea, is like the really core part that's unique to you is all stored in that data folder. And so for you, if you really want to persist anything, you can just look at that documentation and store the contents of this folder in a volume, in a box, so, on your computer.
So Jeff, so mention you want to store the Postgres data inside a volume instead of a regular folder. What's the reason for that?
One reason is just because I would now don't really have to care about what folder, right, I'm located in. It's less likely for me to lose it, lose this data. It's not really I wouldn't really want to store it in my code base because it's not readable. So if someone clicks around or opens it up and messes with the file, they could corrupt my data, so I guess it's just, yeah. So for those reasons, I don't know, I would prefer to store it in a volume rather than just a random folder on my computer.
Can a volume be accessed by any Docker container or only by the one?
Yeah, by any Docker, right? Because this is a totally new Docker container. And even if it wasn't a different image, yes, it could be accessed. This is just a box that has data. It's just a location on our computer that stores data, the volume itself too, right? Just to show you, right? Remember, we can do this Docker volume ls. These are listing the volumes. So this is the new one that we are working with. And if you do Docker inspect volume, it's Docker volume inspect. This, right? This is this is where this fancy thing's stored. It's also just a folder on your computer, but you can see it's inside here. So it's just content being stored inside this folder. I don't think it's any fancier than that.
Oh, and yeah, another question is like when you have some files in both folders, like but you want to trying to like bind mount those folders together, like what gonna happen, like how they resolve.
If you have
So your local folder has some documents, and also for example, the Docker container,
has documents. I think that both the contents, like the contents from the Docker container, will be shared in the in your on your local computer, and also that any contents on your local computer will be moved to the Docker container. I believe that's the case. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, this is the main stuff I think I wanted to go through. Right, like a lot of this stuff is particular to this image, right, to the Postgres image, but like working with Docker is an exercise in like reading, is so much of coding is an exercise in like reading the documentation, trying stuff out, right? So that's why, it may seem kind of a little extra, but I think hopefully this helps you, practice with a popular image as to how to really get up and running. All right. And it's just like that thing, like just start small, right? Docker run Postgres. And then that was like Docker run Postgres. Start small. Oh, okay, we broke something. So, and if we read, right, if we read the error, it gives us really good things. For example, use this, right? So then just copy it, just do that next. So it's like just step by step, and slowly we build, fancier stuff. Cool, now we're at least up and running. And then again, it's like, okay, you can kind of dig around lots of times see what's going on by just doing Docker. You cannot always access Bash, but so many, I'd say for a lot of these containers, you can, right? So now I can dig around and see what's going on with this, right? And say, oh, okay, is Postgres running on this? And just start, because it feels more like what we're used to at this point. So I think, for some of you, you're still moving through this. So that's all right. So what I'll do